Right now, somewhere in the world, someone's heart is breaking. Picture them sitting in a dimly lit room, tears streaming down, questioning why their relationship has once again come to an end. Yet in this moment of pure raw emotion, they're actually standing on the brink of their greatest breakthrough. This might seem surprising, but after decades of studying human behavior, neuroscience, and the quantum field, I've discovered something truly remarkable. The times when we feel most alone can often be the moments that set the stage for our most profound transformations. Let me share a powerful story with you, one that completely reshaped my understanding of relationships and human potential. Years ago, I worked with a truly brilliant scientist. She held 3 PhDs, ran a prestigious lab, and was deemed extraordinarily successful by all external measures. But there was a catch. She continuously sabotaged herself. Leaping from one relationship to another, perpetually searching for someone to complete her. Then came a pivotal moment of realization. She had devoted 15 years of her career to making decisions based on her partner's desires and opinions. Her groundbreaking research, her true passion, had unwittingly taken a backseat to these relationships. Embrace the solitude. Tune into your inner self. Remember, these periods of loneliness often precede the most significant transformations. Break free from the cycle and harness the power within you. Stay true to your ambitions and watch as you unlock the full potential that lies in wait. Think about that for a moment. How many times have you dimmed your light to make someone else comfortable? How often have you put your dreams on hold because they didn't fit into someone else's plan? This isn't about being anti-relationship. It's about understanding a fundamental truth that most people miss. Here's the thing. Your brain is literally programmed to seek connection. It's wired that way through millions of years of evolution. But in our modern world, this biological drive for connection often transforms into dependency, and dependency is the enemy of greatness. When you're dependent on others for your emotional stability, your sense of worth, or your direction in life, you're operating from your old programming, your old self. But what if I told you that the most powerful force for transformation in your life isn't finding the right relationship, it's developing the right relationship with yourself? What if the very thing you're seeking in others is actually diminishing your ability to access your full potential? This is where science meets personal development in a fascinating way, right? Research shows that when we're alone, specific parts of our brain associated with self-awareness and personal growth become more active. In solitude, we access neural pathways that are often suppressed in social situations. Instead of processing others' emotions and expectations, our brain can focus on deeper levels of self-discovery and creativity. So here's the fundamental question we need to ask ourselves. Are we using relationships as stepping stones to our evolution, or are we using them as crutches to avoid our own growth? Because here's the truth. The universe doesn't make mistakes. If you're feeling alone right now, if you're questioning your relationships, you're not off track. You might be exactly where you need to be to begin the most important relationship of your life, the one with yourself. This is where your true power lies. This is where transformation begins. And this is what we're going to explore together, how walking alone can take you places that no relationship ever could. Let's talk about what's actually happening in your brain when you choose to walk alone. The science here is absolutely fascinating, and once you understand it, you'll never look at solitude the same way again. When you're constantly in relationships or social situations, your brain operates in what we call a reactive state. Your neurons are firing in familiar patterns, responding to other people's energy, emotions, and expectations. It's like your brain is running an old, comfortable program, but comfort isn't where transformation happens now. Here's something remarkable that neuroscience has shown us. When you spend time alone, your brain's default mode network, what I call your imagination network, becomes incredibly active. This is the same network that Einstein used when he discovered relativity, that Tesla accessed when he envisioned alternating current. But most people never activate it because they're too busy responding to others. Let me share some concrete research with you. Studies of brain chemistry show that during periods of purpose of solitude, your brain increases production of BNF, brain-derived neurotrophic factor. Think of BNF as a fertilizer for your neurons. It helps you grow new neural connections, literally rewiring your brain for independence and original thought. But here's the key. This process is often interrupted when we're constantly in relationship dynamics. Your nervous system tells an incredible story, too. When you're always in relationships, your system stays in what we call social engagement mode. You're constantly reading faces, adjusting your behavior, managing others' emotions. Your autonomic nervous system is so busy processing external signals that it rarely gets to focus on internal growth. But in solitude, that's when something magical happens. Your nervous system shifts into a state of what scientists call productive restoration. Your heart rate variability improves, your stress hormones decrease, and most importantly, your brain starts forming new neural pathways that aren't dependent on external validation. Let me put this in practical terms. When you're making decisions in a group or in a relationship, your brain actually suppresses certain neural circuits associated with independent thinking and innovation. It's not doing this to hurt you, it's doing it to help you fit in, to maintain harmony. This is why so many people in relationships find themselves saying, "I don't even know who I am anymore." But when you make decisions alone, your prefrontal cortex, the executive center of your brain, connects with deeper limbic regions in a unique way. You're not just thinking thoughts, you're feeling your truth. You're not just processing information, you're accessing your intuition. This is what I call whole brain thinking, and it's nearly impossible to achieve when your neural networks are busy processing relationship dynamics. Here's where it gets really interesting. Every time you choose to walk alone, to make decisions independently, you're not just making a choice, you're building new neural architecture. You're literally creating new pathways in your brain that make independence feel more natural, more comfortable. This is neuroplasticity in action. The research on decision-making is particularly compelling. Studies show that decisions made in solitude are often more aligned with our true values than decisions made under social influence. When you're alone, your brain activates regions associated with self-referential thinking. You're more likely to ask, "What do I really want?" instead of "What will others think?" But there's a catch. Most people never experience these benefits because they're afraid of solitude. They interpret the initial discomfort of being alone as a sign that something's wrong. But that discomfort is actually your nervous system recalibrating your brain, creating new neural networks. It's not a sign to retreat, it's a sign of growth. Think about this. Every great innovator, every transformativist figure in history, had to step away from the crowd to access their greatest insights. They had to be willing to walk alone, not because they were antisocial, but because they understood that certain types of neural reorganization can only happen in solitude. Your brain is constantly rewiring itself based on your experiences. When you choose solitude, you're not just getting away from others. You're literally building the neural architecture of independence. You're creating new pathways that make it easier to access your authentic self, to make decisions aligned with your true purpose, to think thoughts that have never been thought before. This isn't just theory. This is hardcore neuroscience. Once you understand it, you begin to see that walking alone isn't just an option. It's a biological imperative for anyone who wants to transcend their current level of evolution. From the moment you're born, society starts programming you with a powerful message. You need someone else to be complete. It's in every fairy tale, every romantic movie, every love song on the radio. Find your other half, they say. Find your soulmate. But let me tell you something that might shake everything you believe about relationships. This programming runs so deep that it's become part of your survival mind. You've been conditioned to believe that being alone means something's wrong with you. The moment you're single, everyone starts asking, when are you going to find someone? As if your value as a human being is somehow tied to your relationship status. Here's what nobody tells you. This isn't social conditioning. It's actually a biological program running in your nervous system. Your brain is hardwired to seek connection because thousands of years ago, being part of a group meant survival. But we're not living in caves anymore, are we? We're not running from predators. We're trying to evolve, to transcend, to become supernatural beings. Let me share something profound with you. Every time you feel that anxiety about being alone, that's not your truth speaking, that's your ancestral programming. That's your old self running an outdated program that says safety equals survival. But what if the very thing your biology fears is exactly what your spirit needs to evolve? Think about it. How many times have you stayed in a relationship that wasn't serving you because the thought of being alone was scarier than the thought of being unfulfilled? How many times have you compromised your dreams because your partner's fears became your limitations? This is what happens when relationships become emotional crutches. I've seen it countless times in my workshops, people who are brilliant, capable, and gifted using relationships as a way to avoid their own greatness. They're so busy managing their partner's emotions that they never learn to manage their own. They're so focused on maintaining connection that they forget about their own evolution. But here's where it gets interesting. The moment you start breaking these patterns, something remarkable happens in your energy field. When you stop reaching outside yourself for completion, when you stop using relationships as a buffer against your own growth, you start accessing parts of yourself that have been dormant for years. This isn't about becoming a hermit or rejecting human connection. It's about breaking the pattern of emotional dependency that's been programmed into your nervous system. It's about understanding that true spiritual growth often requires periods of conscious solitude. You see, when you're constantly in relationship dynamics, you're usually operating from your known self, your personality, your habits, your patterns. But spiritual evolution requires you to step into the unknown to become comfortable with uncertainty. This is incredibly difficult to do when you're emotionally tethered to someone else's reality. The power of breaking these familiar patterns lies in what happens next. When you stop using relationships as emotional crutches, you start developing spiritual muscles you didn't even know you had. You learn to sit with discomfort without needing someone else to make it better. You learn to validate yourself without requiring external approval. You learn to love yourself without needing someone else to show you how. This is true liberation. This is what it means to break free from the matrix of social conditioning. Because once you understand that completeness is your natural state, that you don't need anyone else to feel whole, you stop attracting relationships based on need and start creating connections based on choice. And that's when everything changes. That's when you start walking the path of your true spiritual evolution, unencumbered by the weight of cultural programming and biological fears. Here's where we venture into the extraordinary realms of quantum physics and consciousness. When you begin to understand the quantum field, you start to see why walking alone isn't just a personal choice, it's a powerful tool for creating reality itself. In quantum physics, there's something remarkable called coherence. It's when particles align and move in perfect synchronization. Your thoughts work the same way. When you're alone, truly alone with your thoughts, you can achieve what I call single-pointed consciousness, a state where all your mental energy moves in one direction, diluted by others' thoughts and expectations. Think about water for a moment. When water flows in one direction, it has incredible power. It can cut through rock-shaped landscapes. But when it's scattered in multiple directions, it loses its force. Your consciousness works exactly the same way. When you're constantly in relationships, your energy often becomes scattered. You're thinking about what they're thinking, feeling what they're feeling, worrying about their worries. Your consciousness becomes like scattered water, losing its power to create change. Let me share something profound about the quantum field. In quantum physics, we know that the observer affects the observed. The mere act of placing your attention on something changes its behavior at the subatomic level. Now think about what happens in relationships. How often is your observation of possibilities clouded by someone else's perception? How often do you miss opportunities because you're viewing reality through the lens of another person's limitations when you walk alone? Something extraordinary happens in the quantum field. You become what quantum physicists call a pure observer. Your consciousness isn't entangled with anyone else's expectations or fears. This is crucial because in the quantum field, expectations shape reality. When your expectations are purely your own, unclouded by others' doubts or limitations, you become a more powerful creator. Here's where it gets really interesting. In quantum physics, there's something called the zero-point field, a field of pure potential where anything is possible. It's like a cosmic canvas waiting for the observer to collapse waves of possibility into particles of reality. But here's the key. Accessing this field requires a level of coherence in your consciousness that's very difficult to achieve when your energy is entangled with others. Let me give you a practical example. Have you ever had a brilliant idea, felt absolutely certain about it until you shared it with someone, and their doubt made you question everything? That's not just a psychological process. It's actually a quantum phenomenon. Their observation literally interfered with the quantum field of possibilities you were creating. When you walk alone, you maintain what quantum physicists call quantum coherence in your thought patterns. Your intentions stay pure. Your vision stays clear, and most importantly, your energy stays focused. You're not constantly having to adjust your frequency to match someone else's vibration. Think about the double-slit experiment. In quantum physics, when we observe an electron, it behaves differently than when it's not being observed. Your dreams, your goals, your potential. They all exist in a state of quantum superposition, containing all possibilities. But the moment you allow others to observe and judge these possibilities, you're forcing them to collapse into more limited forms. This is why so many great innovators and creators throughout history had to step away from the crowd. They intuitively understood that to access new possibilities in the quantum field, they needed to maintain their own quantum coherence. They needed to be free from the observational interference of others, doubts and fears. When you're alone, truly alone with your intentions, you're able to hold what quantum physicists call a coherent state for longer periods. This coherent state is like a laser beam of consciousness cutting through the static of collective consciousness and accessing pure potential in the quantum field. But here's the most powerful part. When you learn to create from this place of coherent solitude, you're not just manifesting from your personal power, you're tapping into the infinite potential of the quantum field itself. You're no longer creating from need, lack, or dependency. You're creating from wholeness, from completeness, from what quantum physicists call the unified field. So this is why walking alone isn't just about personal independence. It's about becoming a more powerful creator in the quantum field. Because when you can maintain your quantum coherence, when you can observe possibilities without the interference of others' limited perceptions, you become what I call a quantum creator, someone who can collapse waves of infinite possibility into tangible reality through the power of their own coherent consciousness. Let me share something powerful with you about rewiring your brain for independence. This isn't just about being alone, it's about fundamentally changing your nervous system's response to solitude. And I've got a specific process that can transform your relationship with yourself forever. First, let's talk about what's really happening in your brain when you're emotionally addicted to others. Every time you seek validation from someone else, your brain releases a cocktail of chemicals. Dopamine, serotonin, oxytocin. You become addicted to these chemicals. You've trained your brain to associate worth with external approval. But here's the revolutionary part. You can create these same chemicals internally through specific meditation techniques. Start with this practice. Sit alone for 20 minutes each morning. Place your attention on your heart center. Now, instead of thinking about someone else loving you, generate the feeling of love from within. Feel it expanding in your chest. Your brain can't tell the difference between love you're receiving and love you're generating. You're literally rewiring your neural circuits to produce these emotions independently. This is where most people get stuck. They try to meditate, but their mind keeps wandering to relationships, to what others think of them. And that's your old programming fighting to survive. Every time you bring your attention back to self-generated emotions, you're building new neural pathways. You're teaching your brain that you don't need external triggers to feel complete. Here's a crucial understanding about breaking emotional addiction. Your brain has been conditioned to associate certain emotions with external situations or people. But in reality, every chemical, every emotion you've ever felt was produced by your own body. You've always been the source. Other people were just the triggers. I've developed a specific technique for building internal validation systems. Start by writing down every complex, every piece of validation you're seeking from others. Now here's the powerful part. Spend time each day giving yourself exactly that validation. If you're seeking approval for your work, approve of yourself. If you're seeking acknowledgement of your growth, acknowledge yourself. You're not just saying words, you're literally rewiring your brain's reward circuits. Creating new thought patterns independently requires what I call mental rehearsal. When you face a challenge, instead of reaching for the phone to call someone, sit with it, feel the discomfort, watch your old patterns trying to pull you back to dependency. Every time you solve a problem alone, you're building new neural architecture for independence. Let me give you a specific practice. Every night before sleep, review your day. Find 3 moments when you wanted to seek external validation but chose to validate yourself instead. Feel the pride, the self-reliance in those moments. You're programming your brain to associate pleasure with independence rather than dependency. This rewiring process isn't just psychological, it's physiological. Every time you choose solitude over dependency, you're changing your brain's chemistry. You're creating new synaptic connections that make independence feel natural, comfortable, even pleasurable. Remember, your brain is perfectly designed to support you in solitude. It's just been programmed for dependency through consistent practice, through conscious choice. You can rewire it for solo success. You can build an internal validation system so powerful that external approval becomes unnecessary. This is what true freedom looks like, not the absence of relationships, but the presence of complete self-sufficiency. When you reach this state, relationships become choices rather than necessities. You're no longer seeking to fill a void, you're choosing to share your completeness. Your brain is changing right now, just considering these ideas. Every new thought is creating new neural pathways. The question is, will you continue walking this path of wiring for independence? Or will you let your old programming pull you back to dependency? Let's talk about something remarkable that happens when you truly understand the higher purpose of solitude. Throughout human evolution, it's been the independent thinkers, the ones who dared to step away from the tribe, who've driven our species forward. This isn't just about being alone. It's about accessing a level of consciousness that's only available in solitude. Think about Nikola Tesla for a moment. He would walk for hours alone in the park, visualizing his inventions in perfect detail before ever touching a tool. His greatest breakthroughs came not in the laboratory, but in the moments of complete solitude. Einstein developed the theory of relativity while working as a patent clerk, often spending hours alone with just his thoughts. These weren't just coincidences. They were tapping into something fundamental about human consciousness. When you're alone, your brain operates at a different frequency. The constant background noise of social interaction falls away, and you can access what I call the evolutionary edge of human consciousness. This is where true innovation happens. This is where you can hear the whispers of universal consciousness. Marie Curie worked alone in her laboratory for years, facing ridicule and rejection, but she discovered radioactivity because she was willing to walk a solitary path. Leonardo da Vinci spent countless hours in solitude, observing nature, making connections that others missed because they were too busy conforming to group thinking. Here's what's fascinating about creativity and solitude. They're not just casually related, they're neurologically linked. When you're alone, your default mode network becomes highly active. This is the same network that's associated with imagination, with creativity, with connecting seemingly unrelated ideas. But this network often gets suppressed in social situations because your brain is too busy processing social cues. Consider the great mystics and spiritual teachers throughout history. Buddha didn't find enlightenment in a crowd. He found it sitting alone under the Bodhi tree. Jesus went into the desert alone for 40 days. Muhammad received his revelations in solitude. These weren't just spiritual practices. They were tapping into the profound relationship between solitude and expanded consciousness. When you're truly alone, something extraordinary happens to your consciousness. You stop being a local processor of information and become a receiver for universal consciousness. It's like tuning a radio. When there's too much static social noise, you can't pick up the subtle frequencies of universal wisdom. The most powerful part of this understanding is that evolution itself seems to favor the independent thinker. Look at any major leap in human consciousness. It always started with someone willing to break away from conventional thinking, someone willing to be alone with their insights until they fully develop. Your nervous system knows this at a deep level. That's why solitude can feel both frightening and exhilarating. It's frightening to your old brain, your tribal brain, but it's exhilarating to your evolving consciousness. Every time you choose solitude, you're not just choosing to be alone, you're choosing to participate in the evolution of human consciousness. Think about the great artists who changed how we see the world. Van Gogh, Frida Kahlo, Georgia O'Keeffe. They all had periods of profound solitude where they developed a unique vision. They understood that to create something truly new, you had to be willing to step outside the collective consciousness. This is the higher purpose of solitude. It's not about isolation, it's about elevation. When you're alone, you can rise above the collective field of consciousness that keeps most people stuck in old patterns. You can access what quantum physics calls non-local consciousness, awareness that transcends space and time. Remember this. Every great leap in human understanding, every profound innovation, every spiritual breakthrough came through someone who was willing to walk alone. Not because they were antisocial, but because they understood that certain frequencies of consciousness are only accessible in solitude. This is your evolutionary advantage. This is your path to accessing universal consciousness. This is why walking alone will take you further than any relationship, because in true solitude, you're not really alone at all. You're connected to everything. Let's give you practical tools right now to transform this knowledge into lived experience. Because understanding is one thing, but integration. That's where real transformation happens. First, let's establish your daily practice. The moment you wake up, before you check your phone, before you connect with anyone else's energy, spend 20 minutes in what I call sovereign silence. Sit with your spine straight, hands on your knees, and focus on your breath. This isn't just meditation, it's a declaration to your nervous system that you're capable of generating your own stable emotional state. Now here's something crucial about emotional dependency that most people miss. Watch for these signs. Do you check your phone first thing in the morning? Do you need to tell someone about every significant event in your day? Do you feel anxious when you're not in constant communication with others? These aren't just habits, they are symptoms of emotional dependency. Let me give you a specific practice for breaking these patterns. Create what I call a sovereign space in your day. This is a 2-hour block where you're completely unavailable to others. No phone, no email, no social media. At first, your nervous system will rebel. You'll feel anxious, maybe even guilty. That's perfect. That's where the rewiring happens. Here's a powerful way to maintain boundaries while staying connected before any interaction. Set what I call an energetic container. Decide in advance how much time you'll spend, what energy you're willing to exchange, and what your limits are. This isn't about being cold. It's about being clear. When you're clear about your boundaries, you actually become more present in your connections. Watch for what I call energy leaks in your daily life. These are moments when you give your power away without realizing it. Maybe you change your plans because someone else might be disappointed, or perhaps you hold back your truth to keep the peace. Each time you notice an energy leak, correct it immediately. This builds your self-reliance muscles. Creating from wholeness requires a fundamental shift in your operating system. Start each day by writing down 3 things. I'm complete. I am creating from abundance. I am my own source. These aren't just affirmations, they're instructions to your nervous system. You're literally programming your brain to operate from wholeness rather than lack. Here's a practical technique for maintaining independence in relationships before making any decision. Ask yourself, would I make the same choice if I were completely alone? If the answer is no, you're probably operating from dependency rather than choice. This simple check can prevent years of compromising your truth. Develop what I call a personal power inventory each night. Review your day and identify moments when you maintained your independence, when you chose your truth over approval, when you stayed centered in your own energy. This reinforces the neural pathways of self-reliance. Now here's something crucial about staying connected while maintaining independent schedule, what I call conscious connection time. This deliberate practice stands apart from reactive socializing. Unlike impulsive interactions driven by fleeting emotions, conscious connection time is intentional and boundaried. During this period, you choose to connect from a place of wholeness rather than need, empowering yourself to nurture genuine, purposeful relationships. By doing so, you affirm your independence while maintaining meaningful connections. When you feel the pull of old patterns, and you certainly will invoke this powerful emergency protocol. Pause immediately, irrespective of your current activity. Place your hand on your heart, grounding yourself in the present moment, and take 3 deep, rejuvenating breaths. This centering technique creates space for reflection. Then, ask yourself the crucial question, am I choosing this from wholeness, or am I reacting from habit? This profound pattern interrupt can be a pivotal tool. It helps safeguard you from reverting to dependency, a cycle that often diminishes personal growth. It's vital to remember that integration isn't merely a destination to reach. Rather, it's a daily practice that requires continuous effort and mindfulness. Each time you choose independence over dependency or sovereignty over external approval, you're not just altering your behavior on the surface. You're actively evolving your consciousness at a deeper level. This transformation is not merely symbolic. It's a genuine evolution towards a new, empowered version of yourself. This journey embodies the art of walking alone, not characterized by isolation, but by maintaining a sovereign connection with yourself and the universe around you through this path. You cultivate a life that is distinctly yours and not merely a reflection of others' expectations or desires. It's about moving from being someone who seeks fulfillment and completion from external sources to becoming someone who creates from a profound sense of wholeness within. The path ahead is clear and the tools to navigate it are firmly within your grasp. The ultimate question remains, are you ready to walk alone into your greatness? Are you prepared to embark on this transformative journey? Embracing the profound opportunities that arise when you choose the path of independence and self-realization over conformity and dependency.